feedback. It may not be your favorite word, but at the end of this episode, you'll have a new appreciation for and understanding of how to give more effective feedback. Welcome to the 115th episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Let's go.
Welcome to the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. We are here each week to talk about leadership, teamwork, organizational culture, and human potential with experts from every walk of life. Your host is Kevin Eikenberry, a best-selling author and leadership thought leader for 25 years. This episode is sponsored by Kevin's book, The Long Distance Leader: Rules for Remarkable Remote Leadership. Order your copy today at remarkablepodcast.com/book. And now, here's your host, Kevin.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Our guest today is Margie Mauldin. Let me tell you about Margie. She and I have known each other for a long time, and then we'll dive in. So she is the Executive Forum's owner and president. She's an energetic and creative leader. She has been helping folks mostly in the Denver business community, but beyond that, we'll talk more about that as we go, delivering training to over 5,000 people each year. She's also the best-selling author of Feedback Revolution, the book, and I Love Feedback, a performance management training program. A global program, I Love Feedback, has been delivered to over 6,000 people via traditional classroom and the virtual classroom. Her civic involvement includes serving on a number of boards and supporting education and development scholarships. She holds a whole bunch of degrees in things like music and library science and adult education and more. She's a smart woman. She's a fun woman. She's here with me today. Margie, welcome to the Remarkable Leadership Podcast.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks.
I'm glad to have you. We saw each other a few months ago, and I said, let's do this. And so here we are. And before we dive in to all things feedback, which is really what we're going to spend our time on today,
Right.
Tell us a little bit about your journey that got you here. We don't need the entire life story, but I'd love a little bit of a snapshot. It helps people get a sense of who you are and where you're coming from.
Sure. As you said, I love music. I have a degree and background in music. And I think what got me to where I am was the love of performance and the love of learning. And so I think I combined those two when my two backgrounds to get to the place of running a small business and ultimately writing this book and the training program.
And we're going to talk about that book here in just a second. So how is it that you came to pick feedback or to focus on feedback? You know, your organization has been doing a lot of training. You've done a lot of great stuff over the years, but what was it that led you to feedback as a thing that you wanted to focus on?
I was not very good at giving feedback. I could cheerlead on one side, or I could be silent and avoid the conversation. But I was not very good at giving feedback. And I felt like if I needed something, a model to utilize, then other people might too. And that's really what led me to it.
You figured you weren't alone? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right.
Pretty safe on that one,
Yeah.
and pretty self-aware, which is really great. So what is it? So now that you're doing lots of training and you and your organization are out sort of spreading the word about giving effective feedback, what is it that you would say that leaders need to know about it? Like maybe what are a couple of things that a lot of leaders are missing in relationship to feedback?
I would say most everyone that I talk with, leaders, employees, supervisors, managers, you mentioned the word feedback and everyone goes, I don't, they associate it with a negative connotation. And I want people to think about feedback as information that's shared for improvement, not just a retrospective look at what you didn't do correctly or on time or in more detail in the past, but what can you do going forward? information that's shared. This is my definition of feedback. Information that's shared with another person or group for the distinct purpose of improvement. It's not about venting, shaming, blaming. It's about looking at the future. So you can even say forward.
That's exactly right. That if all we're going to do is look back, it's just a history lesson, right?
Exactly.
And most people don't really like history. So Margie, here's the thing. Sometimes I'll say to leaders, I said, you know, there's baggage with the word feedback. They'll look at me funny. I said, well, don't do this, but think about this. Tell someone you're going to give on Friday afternoon. Tell them you want to give them feedback on Monday.
Oh yeah, ruin their weekend.
Because
exactly.
all of that stuff, exactly what you said, that people's thought about that word is, oh, yuck. I don't really want any of that. And it's largely because they've not ever gotten any that was very helpful, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just imagine if you're a leader and you have people lined up on your outside your door on Friday because they want feedback. They want that nugget of improvement. They want to get better. If you think about this in terms of, say, for instance, the reality shows that are on television everywhere now,
yes, all
those people want feedback. Why? So they can improve and they want to stay on the show. Yeah. And that's the atmosphere I would love for people to develop in their organizations, that they're getting better every week.
I think that's a really great observation. Now, I am of the opinion, and I've told my daughter this many times, that there is more TV than reality in the shows. Having said that, however, I will tell you that I have watched The Voice a little, and I have been consistently impressed with the quality of the feedback that they give during the show live to people.
Absolutely.
Both corrective and positive. And it's really a pretty good model. I mean, my thought, feel free to add to that, but I have been, again, I'm not a regular watcher, but when I've watched, I've been pretty impressed, generally speaking, with the quality of the feedback that people have, that those musicians, right, like yourself.
Yeah.
So, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are two dimensions that are going on in that particular program, The Voice. The contestants want to improve, but the coaches also want their contestants to improve so that they win. And
there's a really good point. That's a really good point, right? There may be a third level for some of them. I'll make an observation, but I think you're exactly right. So if we're, as a leader, wanting our folks to get better, then we've got to get better at this skill, because this is the skill that helps our folks get better.
Absolutely, it is. And it's easy. When you're giving feedback about improvement, that's happy. So it's not a negative situation at all.
Yeah, so here's we'll leave The Voice, but my third thought was, unless your name is Adam or Blake, you also might want to be doing that well, because you want to come back for another payday to be back on the show.
Exactly.
But the point, I think your point is a brilliant one, that one of the reasons they're doing it well is because there's self-interest there for that coach to do it well, because they want their coach to do well. And that should be the spot all of us are in every day, right? That should not be foreign to anyone listening to this show.
Absolutely. And there's a concept that we use in the program called What's in It for Them, WIIFT. Mm-hmm. Not what's in it for me, but what's in it for them. And when you think about the information that you're going to share with them, why do they care? Why will it be appropriate for them? How is this going to help them improve? So when you are forming your words and your feedback information for that person, it's always through that lens of how is it going to help them improve.
Well, the episode that I just recorded earlier today that will actually be next week for everyone listening, we talked about the importance of being a willing learner. And what you're creating is, what you're saying is, in giving the feedback, I've got to help the person want to accept this. They've got to understand what the benefit is in it for them, right?
Right, exactly.
Good. So I'm going to come back. We've dove right into feedback, and we're talking with Margie Mauldin about her book, Feedback Revolution, Building Relations and Boosting Results. So tell us a little bit more about the book, if you would.
Oh, sure. The book is meant to really talk about the need for feedback and helping to change the connotation, as we talked about in the very beginning, of giving feedback, and having some background and also a model for giving feedback too, that you're thinking of how it's going to help the person improve, and looking at your own perspective from that. Am I giving this information for improvement, or am I venting? Do I still have an attitude about this encounter, this situation? And if you do, that's the time for self-reflection and awareness as well.
Yeah, I often say, don't give feedback until you're ready. And what you're describing is you got to be ready, and that's not when you're ready, right? Yeah. In the book, one of the things I love about the book is you talk about what you call the 5 fundamentals of effective feedback.
Right.
Now, I don't want you to give away the store because people need to go buy a copy of the book, but can you give us an insight into the 5 fundamentals?
Yeah, really. We just talked about one of them, that is being ready. We talk about finding your zone and knowing where you are and what you want to accomplish. You certainly need to have the facts. We remember that old television show, Get Smart?
Yeah. Well, you're not really asking me that, are you? You can look at the color of my hair and know that I remember that show. But anyway, go ahead.
So,
some of you listening have to Google it. Well, yeah. It was a movie, so maybe you'll remember the movie that came out.
Yeah, that's true. So that's just about gathering your facts and knowing what you're talking about. And then you definitely want to choose your words carefully. I think there are a lot of words that we use habitually. You know, a word that I'm kind of tired of hearing right now, the narrative around this. I know we're in political season, but you choose your words carefully, and then you really want to create a dialogue when you're giving feedback. It's about gathering information and building a commitment together about something for the future with the person that you're talking with and giving feedback to.
That's awesome. So one of the things that leaders sometimes have a challenge with, Margie, is giving feedback to someone that they view as being, and maybe they have experience that says that that person is really sensitive. So what advice would you give to a leader who's trying to give feedback to someone who's they see as pretty sensitive and they're not sure how they're going to take the message?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point, Kevin, because we sometimes avoid those situations because we don't know what to do. I would say know your audience, know something about the person, and use that information. If you think that they would be more comfortable having a conversation in their office instead of yours, or go to a coffee shop. So use some really common sense and looking at those things, and not just taking on your role as a leader that you're going to sit behind your desk and deliver a message. No, it's just really a conversation.
Well, I am sitting here behind my desk as we speak, and there is a chair on the other side of this camera if you're watching us. But on the other side of that, there are 2 comfortable chairs in my office. And oftentimes that's where, if we're having transactional conversation, we will have it across from my desk, but otherwise I'd like to get the desk out of the way. And so I think that's really good. Think about the environment that you're in. Think about those things.
And also another tip, if you will, concept that we use is just the small step of asking permission to give someone feedback. Now, the first thing usually that senior leaders will say is, I don't need to give permission or to ask permission. This person reports to me. And the question is not one about hierarchy. It's about respect. So when you ask a person, for instance, you might say, hey, Kevin, I noticed something in our meeting earlier today. Could I share that with you? That's asking permission.
Aha. Now, see, I think it's really important the way, I hope everyone really caught that, because a lot of people say, well, what I thought Margie was going to say was she was going to say, can I give you some feedback? That is not what she said.
No.
Right? So you want to talk about the difference between what you said and what I just said, which is what a lot of people were thinking you were going to say?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of ways that you can ask permission to share information with people. You can say, I noticed something. I'm not sure I'm seeing this clearly. Could you explain this to me? There are many ways that you can ask permission without saying, hey, I need to give you some feedback.
Yeah, because remember, if we go back to the beginning, if the word feedback has this negative stuff in our head, if we're saying yuck, then can I give you some feedback? Do I have a choice? If I have a choice, I'm going to say no. Right. So I think you have to really, I love the idea that and if it's really going to be a conversation, then it should change the dynamic. It'll take a while. It may take a while for your folks to get used to that, but it will really work.
It sure will. And there's another piece I'd like to share about that too, is before you are going to give feedback to someone or have a conversation, that you start thinking about, what do you appreciate about that person? Great sense of humor, their community activities, organizing the holiday party at work. There are a lot of things that you can appreciate about someone, and then it opens up a sense of that person. It's not just this one, perhaps, negative thing that you want to talk about. It makes a bigger.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is, and I think it's real important, is that you're just wanting us to prepare ourselves to have that conversation with the other person. You're not necessarily saying that you're going to give them the feedback about doing the holiday party. You're just wanting us to go in with a really sort of open, positive frame about the person. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that is super good stuff. That's really in every episode, Margie, there's at least one point where I tell people, well, you got your money's worth. Of course, this is a free podcast, but like that moment right there is really one of those moments. Now, the book has an interesting word in the subtitle that I don't think I've read other books about feedback, but I've never read one where the word relationships was in the title. So talk to me about why you consciously chose to have the subtitle of Building Relationships and Boosting Results. What's the connection between giving feedback and having a relationship?
I think if you are a leader and you are helping people, you're guiding, you're nurturing, you're coaching, whenever you do that in a consistent way and giving feedback to your team weekly, maybe bi-weekly, when you really get good at it, you can give some drive-by feedback also, but that helps to deepen the relationship when you're depending on each other for improvement. And I really think that when you are giving someone some information that's going to help them get better, they are going to have better results. And it also deepens that relationship where there's accountability, which then also drives engagement from my perspective. Beautiful. People that are held accountable are engaged. They're doing their work. They're involved with the team. They're collaborating. It's a great thing. And you can tell teams that are in this situation. You can sense the energy around that.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. So I think it's the last chapter in the book that I wanted you to talk about really briefly, because I think it's interesting. I don't fall into the same boat with a lot of people who really want to say, well, these are millennials, and so you need to talk to them this way, and these are baby boomers, and you need to talk to them this way. But you did a nice job in this book talking about giving us some things to consider if we're giving feedback to different generations without being stereotypical. So I want to give you some feedback and say I appreciate that, and I think there's some usefulness there. So just talk to us maybe briefly about some ideas about giving feedback across generations.
First, thank you for recognizing that there's no formula for giving feedback to a millennial versus a boomer versus a Gen X. I think you give feedback to that person, and you're going to use your messaging, use your words appropriately. And it is true in our generations that we capture information and we utilize information in different ways. Millennials in particular, they love feedback. They've been getting feedback all of their lives, from the soccer field to the classroom and beyond. And they really enjoy getting feedback, I think, and they want to improve. Now, a lot of people say millennials already think they know everything, but I think they said that about us too when we were 30.
I think you're so right. I think I think it's as much about age as about anything else, and about where you're at a different age than they are. So Margie, before we wrap up, I've got this segment I've been doing with folks, and I call it the fast break. So I have 3 ideas. I'm going to share the idea. In most cases, they're just a word, but I'm going to share it with you. Then I want you to sort of share your first reactions, thoughts, whatever you want to say. It's a chance for you to just speak to that word or that idea. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The first one is change.
Love it. Love change.
Well, you're saying you do, and I think you're also probably saying all ought to be, right?
Well, what is the same about your computer, your cell phone, the cable service that you have? What's the same about that as 2 years ago? Probably not a whole lot. So we're changing everything.
All the time. You might as well love it. Second word is conflict.
Conflict can be healthy. Don't be rash with conflict. Think it through.
Awesome. And the last one is decision making.
Decision making. We're looking for new office space right now, so I've got to make some big decisions, and I'm having problems with that. Include others when you're stuck.
There you go. There you go. Excellent. Thank you. So you're running this business. You're all involved in the Denver business community. You wrote a book, all this stuff. So tell me, what do you do? I mean, I already know the answer to this, but what do you do for fun?
Well, I love music, and I love to play the piano, sing with my jazz band. I also enjoy reading a lot, and a former librarian. I guess that has to be on the list. And certainly it's summertime in the Rockies, and hiking and walking and getting out there with the trees and the rocks and the animals. It's just great.
Just don't sing in the library. Okay. So, so that leads me to my second to last question, which is about what are you reading, or what's something you've read recently that you might share with others that they might find interesting as well?
I'm reading a book called The Undoing Project by Michael Lewis. And it's just fascinating to get into content that's not your general world. And I really love being exposed to different things.
Yeah, it's a great book, everybody, The Undoing Project. We'll make sure that that link is in the show notes here so people can take advantage of that. So now the last question I have for you, Margie, is the one you've been wanting me to ask, which is about where can people learn more about you and your work and the book and the workshop? Where do they go?
Okay, you can go to ilovefeedback.com. We're in the process of making a bigger and better, more user-friendly website. So all of that information is there. The training program is a 4-hour program, really built to be direct to that performance conversation with giving feedback.
So the ilovefeedback.com and the book is called The Feedback Revolution.
Feedback Revolution.
Building relationships and boosting results. Margie, it's been a pleasure to have you. But before we finish, everybody, I have a question for all of you who are listening, and that is, now what? 30 minutes of conversation, 30 minutes of insight, 30 minutes of wisdom, lots of tactical, it may be as tactical and practical as any episode we've done in a while. And so what are you going to go do? If you are a leader now, or if you're a parent now, for that matter, there's feedback that you could be giving today. And so how are you going to do it differently as a result of this conversation? We hope that you will take advantage of thinking about how to apply what you've learned and not just sort of listening and maybe being entertained by Margie and I. So listen, before we go, again, Margie, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. So glad I ran into you at ATD in San Diego.
Well, I think you sort of came running, not running, but you came over with a purpose to come say hello to me. And I appreciate that you did, because I might not have found you over there in the land of the Hawaiian tropical stuff at your booth.
Good memory.
Anyway, so thanks again, everybody, for joining us. We're here every week, and you should be too, right here. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast.
Thanks.
And